So no, I appreciate you coming out and doing this. This is one of the ones I've been most excited about. So don't let me down. Right.
Exactly. No pressure.
Introduction here a little bit. This is Tom Swenson. You own the Bank of Montana. I think one of the reasons I'm most excited about talking about this is just, I think nobody thinks about this really, but I think our form of banking in America is actually what makes America, so quick to advance.
Yeah.
And be nimble and ahead of other countries in all these different sectors and whatnot. I had a guy on from the UK that was in kind of the mortgage business and whatnot. And I actually interviewed him and we got to talking a little bit about banking. And I quizzed him because I had heard this, that like in the UK and in Europe and the EU and whatnot, they don't have like little small community banks.
Right.
Right. It's like 3 big, huge ass banks. And if you're just a knife maker in his garage in Frenchtown, Montana, yeah, like you're not going to go get a loan to do shit. And so you might have a great idea and want to chase a dream, but you just can't. And I will say, like starting out, the community bank feel, the small banks, like I have to give a shout out to one of your competitors, but like
absolutely
Trail West Bank here in Frenchtown.
Yep.
For years, those guys stood behind me in a way a couple times that they probably shouldn't have, right? And I was just a regular guy banking there, and then at a certain point had my house burned down, and I had freshly been divorced, right? And I actually had to borrow money from a knife collector of mine to kind of get through that just initially to kind of keep my house. But then when my house burned down, I walk in there and I'm like, I'm an apprentice lineman, 4 kids, single, house burned out.
Wow.
And, I need a home loan to rebuild my home. Insurance money came through, but it wasn't enough money. I mean, I lived in a double wide. It wasn't enough money to build what I'm living in today. And literally they were like, we've known you for 15 years. We know what you're about. Like, we'll just keep this loan in-house and like go build your house, and they backed me and they just financed it in-house instead of like selling that loan on the secondary.
It's incredible.
And kind of bringing this story to where we are today. But when I went to build this building, here I walk into their bank and I'm like, I've got this little knife company. It's kind of growing, but I can't afford to go buy land and build a building somewhere. And I need to build this building on my home property. And I need a commercial loan, like as a second on a piece of property that I already have a home loan on. Right. And most big banks are just like, yeah, that's, we're not doing that. And they were like, yeah, we've been watching you, we've seen what you're doing. We trust your judgment. Like, go build your shop. And they loaned me the money to build this shop. And so,
turned it down for commercial use, permits, construction, all the reasons why the big banks would say no.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I did. I snuck this one past. I mean, I told the county I was building a man cave. I mean, it wasn't to be occupied with employees and, all the things. I mean, this wasn't ADA compliant and the whole 9 yards, right? I snuck this one by the county and the bank kind of was just like, get her done, do your thing.
Of course, you didn't know what was going to happen either.
But it came to, a couple of years ago and this next building project, right? And there becomes a point where like, okay, now we need, to build a really big commercial facility. And Trail West was like, it's a little out of our wheelhouse. It's a little rich for our blood, and that's kind of where we came together through some connections. But the point is I'd have never gotten to you without the support of a small, and I know they're actually a reasonably decent sized bank for Montana, but in the scheme of the JP Morgans or whatever, they're a small bank.
Tiny.
And that just doesn't happen in Europe. Like it just doesn't happen in Great Britain to be working as a lineman and borrow some money and build this company in your backyard with the support of a bank. And the only way I did it was through them.
Yep. Same thing in New Zealand and Australia, I think. Not that I'm an expert on international community banking, but yeah.
Yeah. And so with that, and we're going to get into it a little bit, but you guys similarly, just at a larger scale, took again a bit of a risk on us that again the big boys wouldn't have done. And before we jump into that though, I do I kind of just wanted to set the stage for kind of how our relationship came to be. And I did want to shout out Trail West because, they're great. And it could be Trail West here. It could be whatever bank in Ohio. Like, that's what's amazing about America is there's hundreds of thousands of tiny little banks in tiny little towns that allow people, it's like, here's a $5,000 loan or whatever. It just helps them make their mortgage payment.
About 4,500 in America.
Is there?
Banks. Yeah.
So
not including credit unions. And
sure.
Yeah.
So with your story though, before we kind of tie it all the way back to where we are today, did you grow up? I don't even know. Did you grow up here in Missoula? Or?
I grew up in New Jersey and I moved out here 42 years ago, within a week or two of today's date. Yeah.
Okay.
Took a bus out here, $99 anywhere in the country, and went from.
How old were you?
Had just turned 18. Yeah.
What made you get on a bus and come to Montana?
The school, the application fee was $20. Essentially, they'd let anybody in. And I applied, and I can remember my parents talking when they thought I was asleep and said, should we let him apply out there? And my dad's like, he'd never go out there anyway. Let's let him.
Was this University of Montana?
University of Montana. And so I applied, and they would either write or call me once a week or so and say, hey, we like you. We want you to come out here. And all the other colleges were like, you're on the waiting list or denied. And so I thought, they seem to like this idea. So I just had never been here, never saw it, just took a chance. And
what did you do in high school? Like, what were you into sports? Were you into academic stuff? Like, what kind of things were you into?
Yeah, so I was on the soccer team, which was kind of a nerd sport in New Jersey at the time. I was captain of the soccer team, and then was on the ski team, which was essentially one guy and one girl, and the girl was really good, and I could finish the race, and so we got third place in a tri-state competition one time, things like that. But I was like 12th, and she was first, and it averaged out to placing. And anyway, also did track, pole vaulting, and 400 meter basically to stay in shape. The 400 meter part, but the pole vault I enjoyed, and had moderate success. I was looking up some of my stats, and it said I was like in the top 10% of the U.S., but not elite class.
That's pretty elite if you're top 10%.
Well, but
yeah. What did your parents do?
My parents had a small specialty real estate company, and so my dad would basically loved hunting, fishing, flying, and hiking, and so he tried to combine those interests of his into a way of making money. So he would sell farms as corporate retreats and long-term investments to people who are wealthy enough that they could just buy a place and say, hey, we've got all these other assets, but we'd like to just have raw land or farmland. And then he would, my dad would also manage the farm, so to speak, after they had purchased it. And when I say he managed the farm, I mean, he would find a farmer who would, he'd lease the dairy farm or other type of, timber farm, that kind of thing. And so they carved out a neat niche where he was able to take summers off almost completely. We'd spent all our summers in Maine, Rangeley, Maine, in a rural spot. And he would, have an answering machine, call back to work. And that was like advanced. I think it cost, thousands of dollars for this answering machine. Yeah. And he'd fly back but anyway, so they were, independent, really small business people. But his business at some extent is very similar to my business in the end. Yeah.
Kind of unique. And
not very many clients, specialty service.
Yeah. Working hard for smaller amount of clients, basically. Did you get pretty good grades in high school?
Not really, to be honest. I too much information, but I had really good grades through elementary school. Then they had a situation where they're over capacity, and so they had to do split sessions in junior high, 7th grade. And so I got put into the downtown session away from all my elementary school friends. And basically, if you took books home from school, somebody'd knock them out of your hands, or you get in a fight or whatever. And so I thought that the way to get girls or be popular was to get bad grades basically. And so I, faked that for a while, and then it became my reality after a while that I, didn't. So anyway, I was, be lucky if I was the top 50% of my graduating class, honestly.
Right. By the time you graduated though, had you kind of come to that realization, knew you wanted to go to college and actually dive into academics then?
Yes. I had some teachers say, like, Swenson, you'll be lucky if you, get in college a little and graduate, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But for some reason I had assumed that I would go to college, but thought I was scared it was going to be hard. So I got out to the University of Montana and studied really hard in the beginning and got really good grades.
What did you choose for a major?
I came out here for, originally thought I would go for architecture, got there the first week. They're like, we don't have architecture. That's at the Montana State. Like, oh, okay. Then was looking into environmental studies and real estate. Took some environmental studies courses that fall. Remember being in the Janet Rankin Hall, and they were saying how the skies were going to fall, and it was just horrible. And so I was like, well, that doesn't sound that good. So anyway, then just kept going to school and had a meeting with a guy I ran into at the coffee shop last winter, who was the guy, the counselor that I had met with. He remembered me, but I didn't remember, that it was him. But I met with this guy, and he's like, actually the fastest way out is to get an accounting degree. I'm like, really? And so, yeah, all you have to do is take these few more courses and you'll have an accounting degree, business administration, accounting. And so stumbled into the accounting degree, but thought, I'd never be an accountant and don't want to be an accountant.
Right. It was just a way to get a degree.
Yeah.
What was that? What do you remember from that bus trip from New Jersey to Missoula?
I got on. I've got a number of memories that probably can't say some of them, but
no, those are the ones we want to hear about.
got on the bus.
What year is this?
This is 1983, September 1983.
Okay,
and so I get on the bus, and then I get to maybe a stop before Ohio. I can't remember where it was, and a nice lady, seemed like a lady to me at the time. She was probably 25 or something like that, and said, "Hey, you want to get off the bus and go over to my place for a while?" And I was young and naive enough to anyway. So after a couple hours, like, well, I'm going to go back to the bus station and get back on. See you later. And she like fed me or something, and was super nice. But looking back on it, maybe she was was thinking something else or something. I wasn't even aware of, reality at that time.
You were just like, oh, it's a nice lady. And good food.
Yeah. So anyway, met that nice person and then continued on. And I think it was Cleveland, Ohio, that the bus driver said, the bus is oversold. You got to get off the bus. And I had my two metal trunks that I had put under the bus. I'm like, my luggage on here. I can't get off the bus. And so I get into what would be an embarrassing, disagreement with the bus driver for me, now if there was video of it, fortunately there isn't, but anyway, got into it, the bus driver, like, I am not getting off this bus. I'm not getting off this bus, sir. I'm going to Missoula, Montana, and you're not getting me off this bus. And so anyway, so I sit down and insist on not getting off. And then we start driving along, and this guy's like, "You're going to Missoula?" Yeah. And Augustus Ebbett, and from Lyndonville, Vermont, and so he's like, "I'm going to Missoula, Montana too. Maybe we could."
God, how random was that?
Roommates, Yeah. And so we ended up being roommates the next year, but anyway, kept on going. Had a gallon of orange juice that fermented along the way. And I stopped in, I think it was Glasgow, and they had, if I remember properly, they had a pond there and was just filthy after, a number of days on this bus and drinking this orange juice that had fermented by then and swimming in the pond. And I think it was pretty fun. But anyway, so that was the basics of the trip. But the first night we got on UM campus, Gus and I walked out on what I know now is the Oval. And it's like, what's that? It's a cloud up there shaped like looks like an M, and it's like, that is an M. Like, what? And, but just blew our minds that, that would be the biggest mountain bigger than any big mountain in New Jersey.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, kind of what your first impressions were. You really didn't experience big mountains until you hit literally the Rocky Mountain front, right?
Yep.
Probably out of Great Falls or something.
Yep.
What was your impressions of Montana when you first kind of rolled in?
It blew my mind. It was much more cowboy than I had ever, imagined. I liked wearing cowboy boots in high school because nobody wore cowboy boots. And then everybody was wearing cowboy boots and going down to Stockman's Bar and baseball caps and wearing baseball caps inside where I grew up, they'd say like, don't, you can't wear a hat inside or whatever. And just, bunch of,
you probably noticed a huge culture difference.
Yeah,
New Jersey to Montana
massive.
in early 80s.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. People are so nice in Montana. A lot of, energetic, funny, fundamentally nice people in New Jersey, but much rougher, much more aggressive, behavior people. Where here, from my experience, nobody gets in fights. Nobody,
right.
Nobody says mean stuff to each other. And, so it's like, wow, these people are so nice and so big. Like these are the biggest humans I've ever seen. They're all huge. It's ridiculous. But yeah.
Did you pretty much immediately fall in love with it when you got here where you're like, I'm not leaving?
The truth is, no, I missed home like crazy and thought that I had traveled around with my parents and thought that I had some experiences that would make me more advanced, and then realized, well, my parents were always with me. And so I missed home like crazy and went from being popular in high school to, being a skinny little freshman,
out of stater.
Yeah, absolutely. No car, nothing. And so it was tough, but then I, kept sticking it out and ended up falling in love with it.
Yeah. And it's so much different. I mean, it's amazing how much the world's changed. Seems like a long time ago, 40 years ago, but I mean, it's a while ago, but like the difference in society now, like with our connection with our cell phones, even myself, when I was 15, I flew on standby across the country to go train under a old knife maker, George Heron, out in South Carolina. And, as soon as my mom left me at the gate, she gave me a calling card. You dial 100 numbers at a payphone to call home and check in or whatever. But every couple days or something might check in. But nowadays, if you don't hear from your loved one or your kid every hour, you're like, what's going on? People just hover, and you think about how like tough that was for you, but also like how good it was for you too, to just kind of be on your own accord at that and have to figure it the hell out back then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the lack of information, just amazing.
Yeah. And just taught you some resilience and some toughness. And, so you did your accounting degree. What kind of things were you into during college? I mean, just the typical college life, partying and having fun. And
yeah. No particular. I played some soccer on the club soccer team at the time, but not consistently. And so just was basically trying to make it through school. Worked at the food zoo for I think maybe $2.38 an hour. I'd have to look it up, but something like that. Mowed lawns and had a small lawn mowing business that I thought was great. I had a couple of days where I made $250, $270 in a day. And
that's big money then.
Yeah.
What do you think college cost you back then? I mean, because
I think it was about $8,000 out of state room and board tuition
per year.
Per year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, still a fair amount back then.
Yeah.
I mean, still a fair amount.
Yeah.
For those times. But it's just amazing the price difference now with these kids going to college. But so when you graduated college, you've got this accounting degree, but you don't want to be an accountant. So where'd you go? What'd you do?
Tried to get a job at a bank in town for I think $6 an hour. And they turned me down. I went down to the bank and said, hey, I'd like to meet who, turned me down, figure out what I could do better next time. They said, well, you can't meet him. That's not possible.
What bank was that?
I think it's where Wells Fargo is now. I think it was Norwest Bank that got bought by Wells Fargo.
Why did you choose a bank? Like, I mean, you've got this accounting degree. You could have gone to work for literally any company.
There
What made you choose a bank?
There were no jobs in Montana. That I'm sure there were jobs, but with my connection level, which was zero, and knowledge level and just information was way different. But from my perspective, there were no jobs. And
so there wasn't like a particular banking interest necessarily.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And you knew nothing about banks, really?
Nothing about banks. Yep.
Yeah.
So the person let me meet with the guy for, a few minutes. And I said, hey, if you wouldn't mind, tell me why I got turned down. Where he said, well, your resume had a home address of New Jersey, and we knew that you wouldn't, stay here. So that's why we didn't hire you, which I'd like to look him up sometime and show him, how things ended up playing out, 35 years later or whatever, but it's interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. So did you just keep applying at some of the other banks in town?
No, I quit, gave up, left town within, I might've stayed, 3 weeks at the most. It might not have been that long, and went home, and then got a job I wasn't qualified for, making about twice as much as I'd been turned down for the job here for, out of New York City. And but the job ended up, when I was interviewing in New York City at this Panel Curran Foster, which was a big 8 accounting firm, they were hiring for this kind of mysterious controller job, fancy name for doing the financial statements for a company or whatever. But anyway, and they said, actually, the place is out in Flemington, New Jersey, just about 20 miles from our parents' house was. So I took the bus out to that Flemington place and did the second interview where they hired me.
Okay. So you actually headed home then after college.
Yeah.
Went home and
Yep.
You say you were freshly graduated to get a controller job. That's a pretty important position.
Yeah. Totally unqualified.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Did you learn quite a bit at that job?
I did. They had what seemed like an older man at the time. He was probably 32 or something. That was like a junior partner at Panel Curran Foster, and they had him train me for the first 6 weeks or so. And they were about 7 months behind on financial statements when they brought me in, and
just reviewing them, going over them.
They just couldn't get the financial statements done for some bizarre reason. And so they kept going through these people, and they couldn't get along with other people that worked there. And, but anyway, so this professional young guy, spent every day with me showing, here's how you do it. Here's exactly how you do it. Here's what an invoice is. Here's what a bill of lading is. And learning accounting, I was always kind of trying to, stuff the information in my head and making it harder than it probably is. It's like, well, here's a picture of a bill of lading. Like, what is that? It's invoice. What does that mean? And so anyway, I literally didn't know anything. And so you take the 3 things, you staple them together, and then you write it down or whatever. And so he gave me this great basic training, and it turns out UM is a very good accounting school, which I didn't, really comprehend at the time, but it was. And they had taught me well. But anyway, so then did that for a period of time, and got where at first had to work a lot. And the guy, Clive Ramsey, who was, I think, 53 at the time, he owned that company and like 6 other companies. He owned United States bronze powders, and he owned atomized atomized metal powders, which that's the one I was the controller of, and then U.S. aluminum powders, not to be confused with U.S. aluminum, but anyway,
those companies are probably all gone today.
Probably, I'd have to look it up. But I don't know how he got a hold of that, and he was from England. I don't know how he got a hold of that level of business, but anyway, so I was trying to drinking water out of a fire hose, and he came back one weekend and said, hey, Dick Foster, the treasurer, says you don't turn in, overtime. Why don't you turn in overtime? And I said, well, I'm just learning how to do this, and I agreed to do it for this wage, and so I don't feel like it'd be right for me to charge you overtime for me learning how to do this job or whatever. So anyway, and I think I started at 20,500 or 21,500, something like that, which is a range at that time was like 18,500 to 21,500. But anyway, so so then the treasurer said, "Hey, Mr. Ramsey, said he really appreciated you doing what you're doing. We know you miss your girlfriend in Montana. We'll fly you out to Montana once a month, so you'll keep working here, and we'll lend you this car of his and some other, and give you a raise. So we appreciate it.
Nice.
Yeah, it was incredibly nice. So I did that for a few months. Stopped in at the university. Said, "Hey, I'm thinking about going back for a master's degree as an excuse to be back in Montana." Because as soon as I got back to New Jersey, I'm like, this isn't the way I remembered it. This is like, wow.
And you had a girlfriend out here.
Yep. So met with the professors, and they're like, you got a better job than you'd get after getting a master's degree. Just stick it out. What, you're crazy. Don't quit. Yeah. And so ended up quitting after only. So I was started in June, quit in beginning of January, and then started the master's program out here.
The worst thing they did was fly you back here and remind you what you were missing.
Yeah. Which I'm internally grateful, but I repaid their kindness with, quitting. But anyway, but they were, super nice people, and I learned quite a bit, and during that period I had gotten where I was doing the job in about 7 days a month, where they had been behind. And then I was like, well, this is, I can't really, now what am I going to do? So they gave me stuff where I was buying copper ingot and doing this other stuff, the assistant purchasing agent and some other, tasks. But anyway, but then went back for the master's degree. And that time around, I was like, I really want to make it. I really want to learn this business stuff. And I'm very, serious about it, and studied a ton doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's quite it's interesting that they, they obviously were trying to keep you by giving you those extra perks and whatnot. But by doing that, they really obviously showed you what you were missing. When you went through your master's degree, were you kind of working during that time as well through school, or did you pretty much just do school?
Pretty much just school. Yeah. I probably did some things, but not at a serious level. I had to study more than, normal people probably. I would study, 12 hours a day kind of thing, and common to stay up all night.
So you were diving into it.
Yeah.
Hard.
Yep.
Did you have a goal at that point yet? Like, was it banking yet? Did you you wanted this master's degree, but what was the goal?
Yeah, it's a good question. And embarrassingly, I don't think that I did have a goal at that point, other than that throughout my youth, I had said I wanted to have my own business, wanted to do these, things and be my own boss. And I forgot when you said, did I work? I forgot that I actually, not the first, quarter at the time they called it, but after that I got a scholarship where I was a teacher, so I taught accounting to pay, and got paid
some entry level stuff.
Yep, got paid pretty decent money for a scholarship. And the requirement was teaching, and so I was working on that a lot during that second year. But yeah, I still didn't know what I was going to do. It was back at the time of, like Wall Street, and people wanted to be into tennis and wearing Islande Lacoste and wanted to be rich, and, and that like business was cool. And getting ahead was cool, but I didn't know, didn't know what I, actually wanted to do. Yeah.
Did you find yourself, are you the kind of guy that can really read and retain information kind of the first time? Did you find it pretty easy once you just decided to apply yourself to really excel?
No.
Really?
Yeah. You
have to work at it.
I got to work at it, read it multiple times, slow reading, the kind of guy with like 3 different colors of highlighter. It's like your whole book's highlighted. What are you doing?
Yeah. Cause when I'm talking to you, feel like when we're in the bank, it feels like I'm talking to a human finance encyclopedia. So just assuming that you're somebody that like really retained or read it once and had it.
Yeah. I've got a good memory, which please don't test it too much, but I've got a good memory. But it takes a long time to get it in my head. But once it's in there, I've got it pretty well in there.
It's got to beat it in there.
Yep. Yeah. But it's not easy. There's, probably some kind of, some kind of learning thing that somebody would grab onto today, probably.
Sure. What did you do coming out of college and out of your master's program?
Too much information, but went back to, my brother was living in New England, went back to New England, applied for a bunch of different jobs, small business development center director at Plymouth State College, got turned down, credit analyst at, I forget the name of the bank system, small bank system. They turned me down, asked them why they turned me down. They said, well, we like that you said yes to this loan, but we just like somebody else better, basically.
Mm-hmm. Why'd you go back there again? Why didn't you stay here?
I don't really know. It was, it was Missoula area in Montana was, in my mind, a totally different world at the time. It was like, you can't get a job here. People don't make money. People don't, it's just like a professional, it's like, it's just totally different than today. It was no,
at that time, tourism wasn't even as big as it is now. I mean, people weren't, I don't think, it wasn't as huge, obviously. And then we had lumber mills, plywood mills, and it was more, actually, Missoula was kind of a stinky ass town.
Stinky. Too. My memory, I'm probably exaggerating. My memory was there was something like 17 mills when I moved to town, and it stunk and was totally polluted.
Yeah, we had the paper mill out here, Smurfit Stone, just outside of Frenchtown a little bit, and that pretty much. When we got our inversions and kind of got foggy in the winter, because I grew up in Lincoln. And we either had to go to Helena, Great Falls, or Missoula, basically, for groceries or parts for my dad's business or whatever. And, we'd always try to go to Helena or Great Falls or somewhere. You came to Missoula and it was like, that place stinks. And, the fog is hanging, all the pollution's kind of hanging down in the valley. And it was just kind of, Missoula was just kind of known as a shithole a little bit.
Yeah. Could have bought I can remember my brother coming out and visiting me at graduation from the master's program. And he's like, Tom, you can buy a house on contract here for $30,000. He's like, you ought to buy every house that you can get. I'm like, I don't even have a job. I can't make any money. Who cares? It's on contract. He said, I'd buy 10, 12 houses. And he's like, you're going to have it made. This is incredible.
Yeah. And he was right.
Yeah. Yeah. I should have listened to him.
Yeah. So you really went back east just seeking career opportunities.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so got done with the end of that summer. No progress. Went down to see my parents, and my dad was always very supportive and like, you're the greatest, kind of unconditional, fanhood or, kind of thing.
Nice, big cheerleader.
Right. But that time when I went down there, he's like, what the hell's going on? You got a job offer from US Bronze. They want to pay you $45,000. Now that you get done with your master's degree, you need to,
get your
take
shit
that
together.
job and start working. You haven't done anything. I'm like, well, I applied for jobs and did this, and I'm like, you need to get to work,
Yeah.
And but anyway, so I'd been not working for 2.5 months or something, which is the only time that I had time off in my life, as it turns out, now.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I'm like, well, I'm gonna drive that old girlfriend out to Missoula. Like, I shouldn't do that. That's a bad idea. Anyway, so drive her out to Missoula. I'm just going to be here, a day or two, rest up, and then drive back. And her mom found a controller job, listed in the paper down in the Bitterroot for a log home company, and so applied for that job and got it. And so called US Bronze, said, hey, not coming back. And I think that was $28,000 instead of 43 or something.
Yeah,
which was. You could buy a lake place with $28,000 a year back,
right?
1989.
But the fishing was good here.
Yeah.
So worked for that log home place for a while, and then what?
So got there, found out probably the reason they hired me is that they were essentially insolvent, and so I immediately needed to fend off vendors. Collecting, trying to shut them down, needed to talk a bank into giving them a line of credit, and needed to get some more capital from the investors. And so I had no idea that it's like, didn't learn that in accounting school. You should look at their books before you accept the job, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so did that for a couple years, and was like, I'm not gonna, I don't want to ever owe somebody money and be in a position where I've got to be, begging them to, let me survive or whatever. I just don't want to ever deal with that again. But anyway, so then went back and taught small business management at the university and small business management and statistics, and which I didn't know anything about statistics, but got the job teaching it. And But anyway, and at that time started a small consulting business called Swenson Consulting, which is basically what is Bank of Montana now, many years later.
Yeah. What were you consulting on? Just kind of small business finance stuff?
At first, that's what I thought. At first I thought that log company was failing because they were essentially lathing a log down to a uniform, pre-lathed log instead of hand carved. And what I learned over time was they perceived their log product as a better product than the hand carved, but people actually prefer hand carved logs and want to pay more for it. And then you do the pi r squared, area of a circle, and you apply that, and you've got a 9-inch start of the tip. And to make it uniform, it's got to go 9-inch all the way down. And a normal log, say, 30 feet long or whatever, 28 feet long.
20 inches at that end.
Right. And so you've just wasted 40% of your materials, and it's sitting on the,
ground,
log room floor there.
Yeah.
And they, I don't think ever comprehended that. It's like, so you've got this product that's less appealing, that costs way more, an incredible amount of waste. So my theory was that, every business wants to have me figure this out for them or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I found out, nobody wanted me to figure that out for them. But what they did want was, hey, I heard you're good at getting money, or whatever, which, where they would have heard that, I don't know, but could you get me, some money? And so the first, I think the first deal that I did, there was a guy, which I don't think you would mind me saying, the original references are so long ago, I'm sure they don't care. But anyway, a young guy named Tommy Thompson, that his family had Thompson Dental. And then he started, I think, American Dental, if I remember the name of it properly. But anyway, he was literally in like the centerfold of Forbes magazine at 23 years old or something. And he had been supported by some angel capital guys. Bob Small, who's a really nice man who passed away, that used to own the like Buick dealership, I think, maybe, and some other Subaru stuff like that. Very, very nice, super funny guy. But anyway, he hired me to try to figure out how to get him some money. And I think he needed something like $270,000. And there was a person in my class that was on the tribal council, real young guy that my memory this is forever ago, but that he was on the tribal council. I said, well, this friend of mine, student, said that they were looking for investments. And then I brought, Tommy up there, and we met with the council for, a couple hours or whatever. And they said, so what you're saying is you want, $270,000, and you'd employ this many people, and you wouldn't mind putting it in our shop. And yeah. And so they're like, what do you guys think? Let's do it. So we're driving home, and he's just jacked, and I'm running up the bill in my mind, in my mind, it's like, you owe me $87 for, my consulting fee per hour for lining this deal up or whatever. It's like, that's not that good of a business idea, or whatever. But anyway, it worked out well. And anyway, so did that for that school year, basically. And I remember writing to my dad, I really learned how to work now. My goal is to take half a Sunday off, but I'm going now. I'm going to, be working hard.
Right. And pushing. At what point did you end up actually working for a bank then in Missoula?
So, sorry, it's too long of a story, but
no, not at all.
But, the man who I had approached for that line of credit for the floundering log home company, he reached out to me and said, hey, we need some help, and we need some expertise in getting our credit underwriting, start a credit department.
Yep.
And so he met with me a number of times. I was like, I really don't want to do this. I remember talking to my dad about it, and he's like, do not go work at a bank. Do not. He's like, Tom, you're not a banker. You're going to walk in there, hear the cell doors close behind you. Like, don't even get started. That's crazy. But anyway, I wanted to be in Missoula. Had kind of gotten my mindset on, if I got going too much on business, then I'd be, drive myself nuts, going on the treadmill and hamster wheel. Don't really want to do that. Don't need that much. They would pay, what seemed like high, it was comparatively high money at that time. Went down there, and the first day of work, at the time they had, people still called secretaries or whatever, loan secretaries sitting in front of me. And she's like, it's like 10:30 morning. She's like, you just fell asleep. And I'm like, I didn't fall asleep. And she's like, you just fell asleep. You were sleeping. And so if I had my life to live over again, I probably would have said yes. I was sleeping and gotten up and walked out of there.
Yeah.
But instead, I stayed there 5 years and was like, this is like so boring. So but at that place, learned how to do underwriting. Bought participations from other banks, which
so you kind of learned a little more how banks work.
Yep. Then applied for a branch for them, which they had just made branching, believe it or not, legal, within a couple of years of when I got down there, 33 years ago, 33 years ago. But anyway, so I did this application, which I think was like $500, and the state said that they would approve a location in East Missoula. And so I was excited about that. Like, hey, I'd go up there and run that location, and like, well, you're not, I don't know, you're really running a, branch manager material or whatever. And we thought about it. We don't want to do it. It's not, I'm like, well, I think if I had 7 million in loans, which I'm pretty sure I could do, over time, I think you'd make money off it, and this would be a good deal. So I'd run the basic numbers of like, this is what it would take to make it, and you really don't need that much. We don't like that idea. Was
this the point you had told me about, that you were kind of proposing that you kind of take some of those riskier loans?
Then it turned into, I said, okay, now I've got, you don't want to do that. I got another idea, and I said, how about I take your denials and I'll charge them a percentage of the loan amount, and I'll give you, so to speak, 80% of my revenue, and I'll take 20%, and I'm pretty sure I could make about the same amount that I'm making right now. And that seemed to make a lot of sense to me. And they, thought about it a little bit like, we're turning these people down for a good reason, and you helping them get these loans is really hurting these people. That's not.
Yeah. Cause what would be an example of somebody that you guys were turning down that you thought would have been a good loan? Like what kind of help did they need?
They needed to, so generally it was that they had historical income, but not quite enough to document that they could make it with this expansion. So like a factory expansion, or a more extreme case, a hotel, where it's like, well, they know how to run a hotel, they've done it, but they haven't, this hotel hasn't existed before. So, and so started working on government enhanced kind of loan products. It's like, hey, if you did this, that actually would remove much of the risk, and then we could bring another bank in and they could buy a part of it, and this could work. And so there was some reason, either collateral needed some bolstering up, or that the cash flow wasn't completely obviously there. Most of it was there, but it wasn't all there.
Yeah.
And so they were kind of near bank type thing. And at the same time, I was on the board. I was on the board of a regional economic development company, which is actually a tiny company. But anyway, after the bank turned me down for that, I must have complained to one of the my co-board members or something, and they came up with the idea, like most of my best ideas in life, somebody else's that I accepted or whatever, their suggestion that I accepted. But anyway, so they said, hey, would you make that same offer to us? And I said, yeah, I would. Get to live in Missoula, and and they said, we'd insist on paying you base pay. You don't need to do it for free, like you're saying to them, but you could do your business, and then you could do what we need. We need somebody managing this economic development, micro loan fund.
Yeah.
And so did that so worked at the bank 5 years. Did that second job as my second annual board meeting, about a year and a half in, and half the board said, we love what you're doing. This is awesome. And then half the board was like, you're helping rich people get richer, and that's not what we're here for. This is not. And I said, well, I see economic development as, do micro lending to help people that, mom and pop shop get started. But then there's this other thing where you're helping people who can be significant employers. And if they're good employers, they are rich, or getting richer or whatever, but that they give these good jobs, and that's a good thing too. And so after about a year and a half, became clear to me, hey, I'm not building equity in this firm. Half the board doesn't really like what I'm doing, and kind of dislikes what I'm doing, and so thought I should just go do this on my own. And so my goal was to make $26,000 a year, take Wednesday afternoons off. This was 1998. take Wednesday afternoons off, go ski in a snow bowl, and be my own boss and not have to deal with this stuff.
Live the life.
Yep. And so started that on, I think December 14th, 1998. That was Montana Business Capital, which is now the holding company that owns the bank. And from that first week, I was maxed out on business. I never got to ski a Wednesday at Snowball until I think maybe last year, once or twice.
Yeah.
But anyway, and was scared that I was under this nonprofit shroud. It's like, well, that's where you get this business referrals. And so I'm not going to really be able to get any business. But anyway, it was much easier to get business and had excess demand for, from the beginning until now.
Right.
And that same business idea is essentially what Bank of Montana is now.
Sure.
Except that we also service loans, do deposits, fund a portion of loans where I started Montana Business Capital with $200 and
really,
yep. And I think I did put $1,200 into it once when I had a low, income week, but made something like $1,500 in the first couple of weeks off this one shoe store deal. The guy still is always super nice to me when I see him, says that it improved his life.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm doing it for free. He paid me $1,500, I think it was, without me asking him for it.
Wasn't that about that time period that you also approached Mark Lyons too? Didn't you approach him for a job?
At that same period when I was going through the turmoil of, what should I be doing? And had just been turned down for the branch, and he got approved, if I remember properly, for his new bank, which was related to Valley County Bank, and he was community bank. And he offered me the job, which I was really excited about because I was super excited to be back in Missoula. And but he said, I got one last question for you before we finalize this. Can you guarantee me that you can do $5 million in loans, in your first year?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't think I can. I said I would hope that I could, but I can't guarantee you that that I can. I've never done 5 million loans. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the first year of my business, which was about 3 years after that conversation, we did about $32.8 million worth of loans the first year, which I had no idea that
right
what would happen. But
yeah, you just understand the scale that it could be.
Yep.
Yeah. Mark actually was our first when he started community bank. My parents he was just a loan officer at a bank, and my parents went with him to his bank when he started that. And I still remember going in and getting loans from him when I was 16 years old for knife equipment and stuff. And that's one thing my parents did well, is they made me learn banking young.
Yeah.
Whether it was borrowing money from them and keeping a tally and paying them back, or going down to the bank and sitting down with Mark Lyons and having him tell me my little business plan. And
wow, it's 16 years old.
Yeah, actually probably younger. I mean, 14, 15, probably. And then banked with him all the way through, got my home loan through him in 2002. Cause that when we moved here, when my ex-wife and I moved here to town, I was just trying to find a fixer-upper or something, and went in there to talk to Mark, and he's like, well, have you ever considered building a brand new home? And I'm like, I'm looking for houses with holes in roofs. I can't afford a brand new home. And he's like, well, you might actually be surprised. And he connected me with a builder, and he's like, I got a guy that might let you dig your own septic system and dig your own basement and put your own driveway in and work with you on it.
Well,
and sure enough, I was able to do that. Lived in a camper and, did a bunch of my own dirt work and whatever, and got into a brand new home out here in Frenchtown with an unfinished basement. And then over the next couple of years was able to put that sweat equity into it. And, but no, Mark was fantastic. And it's funny because actually, he passed away from cancer way too young, unfortunately, but his son is a part of Trail West Bank, which is kind of cool that we came back around to having that connection. But it was just cool to me that you guys, I just really thought Mark was a great man, and it's cool that you guys had just even a little bit of interaction there.
Yeah. Kind of America's hero, where he worked hard, total gentleman his whole life. And then unbeknownst to him, 6 months, as I understand, 6 months or so after he retired, passed away suddenly. Yeah.
Yeah. The cancer it was instant. Yeah. It's terrible. So how do you start a bank with $200 and like, did you have some investors that you kind of line up some investors and like, okay, guys, I've got this guy that needs this loan for making knives or whatever. Is that kind of how it happened originally? And then
something like that. Yeah.
How do you start kind of a bank, at least at that time, with $200?
Yeah. So started the Subchapter S Corporation, Montana Business Capital, with $200. Then applied to the Federal Reserve for approval for that business to become a small bank holding company, and subject to us getting approved for a bank. So went through a Federal Reserve process for that. By that time had saved a substantial amount of money, still not as much as, you might think. But had more cash. And I, like I say, started with the 200, then got up to 100, and each deal I'd be like, well, and I had people that I had done loans with that were like, you need to start a bank. You really need to start a bank.
And how old are you at this time?
Fairly old by the time it got really going. So I was 33 when I founded the holding company that owns the bank. And then by the time I got around to actually literally open the bank, it was Thanksgiving of 2007. So I was 42.
Yeah, but I mean, I think of guys who get to a place in their life that can start a bank. I mean, by that time, it's like you're in your 60s. I mean, it's impressive. You must have been really good, and you must have been really smart as a young person in your 20s and 30s about saving the money that you were earning, because it's not like you were in crazy high paying jobs. So you must have been pretty frugal with the way you lived.
I was frugal in that I wasn't upside down. I didn't have more debt than assets, but I was on a long hike with a couple of my sons. And because he was saying, basically getting at, like, when did you make it, Dad? Or when did you I said, I was pretty old, but anyway, so when I graduated from high school, I had a firewood business and some other stuff that I did. I think I had maybe $10,000-$12,000 of, I had a 1 acre lot on a pond, which was incredibly cheap. At that time it was like worth like $3,000, I think. But anyway, so I had about $10,000 when I graduated from high school. When I was 30, when I started my business, at 33 years old, I think that I had the maximum net worth of $50,000.
Yeah.
That was because my home had increased in value by, 30,000. I had maybe $25,000 saved or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I was a late bloomer for sure. That's like, hey, I'm not going to make it. This is, I'm never, and
sounds
I need
familiar.
To make it,
to my own story.
Yeah, incredible what you did. I had kind of resigned myself to, like, I was happy with, like, that regional economic development company, so-called regional economic, because it was just a tiny place at the time, but it did grow into being a major successful organization, not because of me, but it went on to do that. I loved that job, but it was just that so mostly how I got here is through a series of rejections. That wasn't really my plan. It was like, okay, they rejected me, so I'll do this,
But obviously those guys saw something in you to be telling you, like, you need to start your own bank, Tom.
Yeah.
Like, clearly you had a mind that worked, that you could figure out a path to getting people money or making a deal work.
Yeah. They had Mark Bretz, I don't think he would mind me saying, he was a very early client, was like, really pushed me to, you need to start a bank. You need to stop waiting. What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
And what it was one, procrastination, but two, that I was like, well, if I just close this one more deal, then I can own like 3% more. And I promised myself when I, essentially got, showed the door at some level at that regional economic development company, I promised myself, like, I'm not going to work for anybody else ever again. I'm not doing that. I'm either going to own the majority of the company or all the company. And I don't care if it's a small company. I'm just not doing the part where somebody else is figuring out whether I'm performing or not. But anyway, so I waited for these deals, and it was very scary to start a bank because I had this essentially a brokerage company that I sold loans to banks. So as soon as you stick your neck out, it's like, yeah, now I want to, do what you guys are doing, and I'm going to compete with you. And so, like, if I ever didn't get approved for the bank, they're going to maybe say, I don't want to buy any more loans from you. You make me mad. I don't like this. And so it was scary to stick my neck out, and that it cost a significant amount of money, in the step up process. And I also had an attitude or philosophy that I didn't want to risk other people, which really held me back in business, that I didn't want to risk other people's money. It's like, I'll bring in investors, but only when I know that I'm approved, only when I know that I got it made. So I think I spent, in the end, it was like maybe $686,000 or something on getting this bank started, which was a huge portion of everything that I ever saved by that point.
Right.
And so it was really hanging my neck out there. This like, okay, I've got to work on this 270 page, including spreadsheets, business plan and all this stuff. And everybody's telling me I can't get approved. And I met with FDIC, and they said, you can't get approved. I will literally, the Western director, George Doris, really nice man, said, I will never approve you to open a bank.
And you kept trying.
Yeah. I said, but if you were going to approve me, what would be like the 10 things that I would change about myself that would make you approve me?
Yeah.
Well, if you actually had banking experience, like 10, 12 years of like what kind of bank? Being the CEO of a bank. Okay, well, that's not, I'm not going to get that. Okay. If you had more capital, I could probably do that. If you had a more normal business plan, sorry, I can't do that one. And he said, if you were just doing like a normal bank, you'd be approved. But this is,
so you were doing these kind of funky
specialty,
loans.
Small business, weird. They don't get it. Like that won't even work. You can't do that few loans and have it work. But anyway, so he gave me this list of things. And I, still very appreciative of him to this day that got those things done. One of them called Mark Brett's, hey, how'd the meeting go? I was on a trolley, as he called, in San Francisco. Not that good. They told me, I'd never get approved, and we won't get approved for the bank, and they'll never approve me to run the bank. So that didn't sound that. It was, I still have a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh boy, this is a good.
It's 1 in a million.
He's like, I've got a guy that delivers. He said, what do they need? 10 years experience? Yeah. How ridiculous is that? If I had that experience, I wouldn't be starting a bank. Like, if I'd just be retiring, what do I care?
Yeah.
But anyway, he's like, well, I've got a guy that delivers RVs for me. And he told me that he was president of some banks or whatever. I don't know if, that's accurate or not.
Yeah.
And he's like, let me ask him or whatever. So do you want to meet him? Or I'll meet him. And anyway, the guy's like, I would love to come do that. Absolutely. Yeah. I was the president of, Bank of Montana system with 12 banks. And if I remember right, and I don't care what you pay me. And, I just want to, have a job that's, fun and respectable. And
so Mark actually gave up one of his employees to help you.
Yep. So, CEO with tons of experience, and they allowed him not to be the CEO. He was a senior vice president. I was still allowed to be CEO. Check. And
he's your babysitter.
Yep. And so anyway, it took about 2 years getting beat up to get through that process.
Really?
And then at the end of that was when I added, partners to the deal,
to get the capital
and that they were telling me, we don't want you doing this by yourself. It's you need to have community buy-in. You need to have other partners. We don't want a single owner bank kind of thing. But anyway, so we had, it took us like 2 hours to raise the capital or whatever, because people had been, saying previously, hey, if you ever do it, please let me know. And I'd been talking about it for years. So they, probably a lot of them were at the point where I don't believe it's ever actually going to do it. But
yeah, same as my knife company. Yeah. Talked about it for 20 years.
Yeah. So anyway, got the bank started with an amount of capital that was way lower than normal at the time, but which they didn't like the idea, but we convinced them, like, we don't need a $7 million building. We don't need, we don't need any of this stuff. So we got.
Where was your first building?
Same place we are right now.
Oh.
And that had been a Morgan Stanley location. We went down there and looked, and it's like, hey, it's got a teller thing in there. Why would they have a teller thing? And so then, I was, renting a basement unit in a bank up the street, and had been for years. And they changed furniture like I changed, my shirt. And this shirt I think I've had for 10 years or something, wear it all the time. But anyway, and said, hey, if you get that furniture and storage there, would you be interested in selling it to me? Yeah, we'd sell you all that furniture for $3,000. We just want to get rid of it. So hired a couple of Danny's friends for, I can't remember, maybe $40 for the day in my flatbed trailer.
Yeah.
Take all the furniture down there. So our furniture expense was $3,000. And then we bought, I think, $176,000 worth of software programs, which is obviously worthless, and some computers. And so we were in the 230,000 fixed asset level starting this bank. No building, no nothing.
Yeah.
And I was able to show them my previous.
You were just renting space in the building you're in.
Just renting space. We ended up buying it, and the unit next door, and then the floor above or whatever. But yeah. So we, and the bank, FDIC was like, you can't make it in a bank having that kind of weirdo model. And I said, well, we've been doing this volume in the basement of a bank with no anything.
Yeah. And now we have furniture and a plant.
Right. Yeah. And windows and stuff. And so I said, I'm projecting, less than we've been doing for years here. So we can make it. But anyway, so George Dorr, when I met most of those conditions, he said, I didn't think you'd ever do it. You did it. We're going to approve you for this, this bank startup.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That was 2007?
2007. Yeah.
Okay. And did you kind of immediately just take off? I mean, did you start getting clients right off the bat?
We did. And we had, it was unusual in that we were,
that's right before the .com crash, right?
98, I think, was a .com.
Or no,
crash,
.com, the
housing crisis. Yeah, absolutely. Great recession.
Yeah.
Yep. And so we had been doing business long enough that I was, and had deal flow. And so all we were doing was like, hey, we're already making money off of doing this. Now we're going to be able to keep a portion of it and add deposits. So we know we can make money. And so we're not desperate to, where normally you spend, a couple few million at least in today's world, probably 5-6 million in startup expenses. Then you have a ton of capital. You got a $7 to $20 million building if you're lucky maybe, and you need to get loans on the books like immediately.
You got to go find clients.
Yeah. Where we projected a small loss, I think like $200,000 in the first year. And I think we did lose about, I'd have to look it up, but like $160,000 and had never lost money in the business, previous to that. But we were able to keep our cool and say, I know if we just do this and do the same stuff we've been doing, but add deposits and move slow. And so we had some opportunities for some huge deposits, different things that I turned down. And the bank centers came in like, we've never seen somebody do this kind of stuff. Like you turn them down for a deposit. Well, I was going to turn over my Apple Card. I didn't know, what I'd do with the money and blah, blah, blah. So we just slowly did it. And then there's another bank in town that got approved the same day as we did, June 6th, 2006. Not a good date, but anyway, it was a good day. They got approved. They were kind of shining star, Treasure State Bank, and then we got the kind of secondary. This doesn't make sense to us. Approval the same day, and they got started a little bit before us. And went for it. And so they had, huge loan volume, nice, beautiful building, all this stuff. But anyway, we got lucky with, to some extent, that natural organic business that I was describing, but also frankly that we just didn't have enough time to do a lot of stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And so probably if the good times had rolled longer, we would have had a problem too, most likely. But anyway, so we were able to, we've never had, knock on wood, thank you. We've never had we've had zero loan loss in 17 years, 18 years this Thanksgiving, and went through that recession. And it was actually to some extent a good thing for us in that, all this wild banking stuff. Well, they said they do this and they, where we're like, well, we're just doing this, basic stuff over here. And then the, government enhanced loan products and that kind of, kind of fancy structuring. People needed that more, and participations where it's like, well, my bank, they're saying that I don't have a problem. They have a problem. And so they just can't lend us any more money. And so we've got to find a way of doing this. And so to that extent, it was a good thing for us, but we were a turtle for sure. We were moving really slow compared to other banks, a little bit embarrassing. We're low performer, for a number of years.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think it's so cool. Like when we first started talking to you and started to learn your story a bit, and then the fact that, it's not normal to walk into a bank, at least these days. Like I can walk into Trail West downtown here and talk to, Ben, who's kind of the president of our branch, or that was what was unique about community, is you could walk into a community bank and you're doing your deposits and you could just kind of be like, hey, Mark. And, he'd walk out of his office and you chat with the president of the bank, and he owns it and makes the decisions. That's so rare these days. And so for us, in our very first, meetings, that we're talking, with you, the owner of the bank, and, Jake, and the guys who really are making the decisions. And it's not some like low loan officer, and you have to go through 5 different levels to where somebody takes you serious. And, the other thing, the fact that you guys were willing to really like hear out our entire story and really look at, when we started talking, we'd probably had 3 years of business under our belt, but really 2.
Yeah.
Really 2. I mean, 2020 kind of doesn't really count. I mean, I quit my job January 1st of 21. So we had 21 and 22. And some of 23. But the fact that you guys were able to kind of look at what we were doing and say, hey, there's something here. And, here we are, on my home property still as we sit here today. And you got a couple guys walking in there that have been in business 2 years saying like, hey, we might need $15 to $20 million, to build this thing. And in such a, it actually, it cracks me up because, I bought a new pickup yesterday, where our old show travel pickup needs to be, traded in. It's got a bunch of miles on it. I'm a little worried about having our show team on the road, pulling a trailer in January and have something go wrong. It's got 200,000 miles on it. So I'm going to give our show team my truck, and I got a new truck through Missoula Chevrolet, and they have some crazy low financing, which I'm still not understand how they're doing that right now. But we're like, well, shit, for that, we'll just finance it. We can be more effective with our dollars. And I said, yeah, it's through MKC, whatnot. I put him in touch with Jason, whatnot. And then I'm on the phone with the guy, and he's like, yeah, you guys haven't been in business very long, so you're going to have to co-sign on it. Me. And I was like, all right, dude, I mean, whatever, I'll co-sign on it. But I said, just so you know, if MKC can't pay the bill, you're not getting any more out of me. Like he's just like, I know, but it's an example of the corporate banking that you get where like the box isn't checked that you've been in business for 7 years. Yep.
Absolutely.
Like I'm pretty sure we can afford this truck. Like we could pay cash for it, but we're just being maybe a little bit smarter with that. But it just cracks me up. And that's the experience that so many people get. Like, well, I don't care if you're doing $2 million out of your garage. You haven't been in business for 3 years. And it's like, okay. Yeah, but you did $3 million out of your garage. Like that's something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I always said. I'm like, I swear certain banks would prefer you to have lost $150,000 a year, but have been in business 14 years and be like, well, we plan on fixing this and fixing that. And okay, that makes sense. Like we can probably back that. Yeah. It's like, no, we did $3 million, but you're not in business long enough. Yeah. And so the fact that you guys do that, and then, so many people, there's lots of different programs out there. There's federal programs, there's, more state programs, and every state is different. And I know of some companies in the outdoor industry that literally had, like their local county, and I won't say what company, cause they told me this, but it's their business, but like the county where they're manufacturing their, I won't even say what it is, but their equipment for the outdoor industry, bought the land and built the building for them, like gave it all to them because they knew but they were already like a pretty good sized business, but they needed to upgrade their facility. It'd be like going from here to our new building. And the county saw it was the neighboring county. So they really wanted to steal that business and that tax base away from their neighboring county.
Right.
And they were like, hell, we'll build your building and buy your land and give it to you. And that doesn't really happen here in Montana, but there's other federal programs and state programs. But what you generally get at a lot of banks is they're not experts in it. And so they're like, well, we can do an SBA thing. You kind of just, fill out all the paperwork and see if SBA, and again, you might get yourself into that situation I was just talking about where you check this one box. Have you been in business 7 years or not? And you're like, well, no, it's been 4 years. And they're like, well, we need minimum of 5. You're out.
Right.
And that's where you guys really dive in and you talk to the different, government officials, and you have a full understanding of that stuff, but it takes a lot of work. Mm-hmm. Like that's what I would say. Like my biggest compliment I could give to your entire staff is they're all workhorses. They're not afraid to work their ass off.
Yep. Incredible.
And your guys buy in just as much as you. I don't really feel like it matters if I talk to you or I talk to Jake. Like I know if I'm talking to Jake, I'm getting what Tom would say.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. So it's just, and the parallels, which I didn't even really realize, like kind of late in life, right? I didn't start MKC till I was 39. Yeah. And that years of having several different people, my buddy Nick, Dave, some of these other guys telling me like, you need to start this knife company. Like you've got something here. You've got a great story and a great product, and, a lot of reasons and excuses why I didn't. But things work out.
Incredible. Amazing.
Yeah. So how at this point with the bank, what's also impressive is you're still very involved, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because you're probably at a point in your life you could go screw off and go do other things, but do you still love it?
I do still love it. I worked so much for so many years that I have gotten where, and the combination of COVID and learning what you can do, that I don't love going into the office. And so I love talking on the phone with them, meeting them at a coffee shop, doing that kind of stuff. But I've become just in the last, 4 years, very unorthodox in that I don't like, I don't have an office in our office building. There's places I can sit down and stuff like that. But anyway,
you can come in for the meetings you need to come in for.
Absolutely. And video and that kind of stuff. But like I said to Danny, the president of the bank, one of the things I've found out is when within reason you could do whatever you want, I think you kind of find out what you really like. And it's a little bit embarrassing what I really like. That like I said to him, you'd think that I'd be out fishing all the time and I'd be, wanting to do these, backpacking trips and blah, blah. And it's like, secretly I want to read a loan review. I want to, hear how this business is making it. I want to think of some other, business that we could, help and, that kind of stuff. And there's some reason, that, I wish, I'm very grateful, but I think people are blessed to do different things. And I was, it would have been nice if I was blessed to be like a professional race car driver or professional hunter or, something really cool. But I got blessed with this like nerdy skill set and interest level. And so I love the story of like how you made it. Like as this is then what happened. Then how, and being able to see that as a banker, which even though I've been in it forever, I'm a little bit embarrassed. Like people ask me what I do, I like long pause, like a banker, I think, I guess I'm a banker, which is, weird. And I'm an unorthodox, personality type for banking, I'm sure. But anyway, I just love that seeing behind the scenes, like, okay, this is how they did it. And so, and seeing that it's like, contrary to possible common belief, the most generous people you'd ever meet are the most successful people, the most humble people, the hardest working, successful people that they, I think a general belief is that they're greedy, take anything from anybody, cutthroat, blah, blah. The successful, and we've had some incredible success stories, that have grown up with us, and none of them were like that. None of them were like that.
Really?
They're
That's interesting.
Super generous, super easy to deal with. Totally appreciate you getting stuff done. Like, Tom, most people don't do what they say they're going to do. So, we really appreciate this. And so it's, just a, really neat experience. And then seeing behind the scenes of, what maybe someone outward appearance looks like, it's definitely don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing. It's like, you just have no idea what, you can't just look at somebody and figure out, are they extremely successful or are they not, that sort of thing. And so it's a very interesting business for me in that way.
It's interesting because your business is like, you own a bank, you're a banker, but I would almost say it's weird. It's a fuzzy line between banker and investor.
Yeah.
I mean, really banks are investors, right? I mean, they're choosing what horses they want to bet on, and they're helping provide them money, and hopefully then they make money off of that bet.
Yeah.
And I could see, I know some investors, and I could see there being an addiction to like finding that next story, right? It's like analyzing draft picks, right? For the NFL. And I could see where a scout could get really deep in the rabbit hole of like finding that next one. Right. And there's gotta be I could see there really being some excitement and some joy, and like really sitting around thinking a lot of like, all right, what is this knife company for real? Like, should we really support them, or this company or that company or whatever? And how much of what you do isn't about dollars and cents, but about gut feeling for you? Or is it usually always about the numbers?
I would like to say the super majority is gut feeling. I would say, I would science it. Would do something called a, quick and dirty analysis, is like analyze it for like 30 minutes. Like, okay, here are the basic factors. But the rest of it is, and sorry to be too detailed, but the person came in and was rude to the person working up front and took a whole bunch of candy when they thought we weren't looking, or whatever it is, which we want people to take candy and that kind of stuff, but like a weird kind of like scooping it in. Yeah. Versus this person is, humble, not a show off. They are committed. They're all in. These people are all in.
It's their passion.
Yeah. And so it was very quick in meeting you candidly and your team. That's like, they're all in. Mm-hmm. It's all in. I'm all in. We need to go all in. Mm-hmm. But you don't have that feeling very often.
I was going to say, there's probably times that they come in that quick and dirty, all the numbers line up. They might be all-star numbers, but are there times where you're like, yeah, everything lines up, like there's no doubt in the numbers, but bad vibe and we're going to pass?
Or that, hey, we, this doesn't match us at this time, but we've got this other source that we actually already called on your behalf. If you don't mind me to say what your name was or whatever, but they'd like to do this. What would you think about working with them? And so trying to recognize it's like, hey, back to that original origin story of just because I say I don't want to lend them money or whatever, doesn't mean that they don't have a right to control their own destiny. So anyway, that's but it doesn't happen very often, honestly. Our marketing plan is more, and I shouldn't say this on air, but our marketing plan is more, I want this to happen. And it used to do it when we were sitting in the basement of this other bank, and you'd get, like, I like airplanes. I want to do airplane lending. Somebody calls for airplane loan, I like, and so we turn down.
There's something about speaking things into existence, or just, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know how it works, but it's worked for us. We are like focusing our attention on these things that we want. We turn down next to nobody per year. And we have an incredible success track record with people, and people would say like, well, how did you know to start this relationship, and how did you know to? Well, I didn't. I just they were just like people that I had been around for a long time, and then we just kind of grew together, and it wasn't like intentional, as intentional as somebody might think. Just totally organic, natural. Maybe lucky, maybe. I'm not sure, but
would you consider? And I'm guessing the answer might be no, but would you consider your bank a community bank?
I think it looks like a community bank, but candidly, and all the statistics are based on community bank, but we are not a classic retail bank where
come in for a $5,000 used car loan or something like that.
Right. Where we're, and we know that Biddeford Valley Bank and Trails West Bank and other banks are better than us at that,
right.
and so we watch what they do, and a lot of banks will do more loans in a day than we do in a year.
Yeah.
Most banks probably. But anyway, so we know we're outdone by them, and so again, it's all organic, natural, and so like using those programs, like you were saying earlier, like, hey, other banks don't want to do it. Well, a major part of why I wanted to do it was because didn't have any money so I needed to get other people's money, and the government had money, and so okay, I'll take that money and then bring this other bank involved, and so and when I would describe our business plan, it's like, well, your business plan is to give away like 80 to 90% of the revenue to other organizations. That
Well, I don't have it.
Right. I don't have that. So I'm seeing it as I'm getting 10 to 20% of the overall revenue.
Yeah.
That's pretty good for me, and then you just save more and you do bigger and bigger and bigger. But so it wasn't necessarily a genius, brainstorm. It was like, this is the only way I can do it. And so,
well, the reason I ask you that question, because I know I wouldn't call you guys a community bank either, but I still put you in that community bank class because you're still serving the community, some loans are bigger than others or whatever, but you're still serving your local community. You don't have any branches anywhere else or whatever. Yep. You're still serving your local community, and you're helping businesses within that community grow. It's not the car loan and the furniture loan place necessarily, but and it also started from from absolute ground zero.
Yep.
I mean, and that's the other thing that I think is really unique is that a lot of these other community banks started, I'm sure, in a very similar way with a guy and, some struggle, and, they've grown their, the Mark Lyons method that, he grew it up and then sold it or whatever. But, I think again, back to the beginning of the podcast, kind of tying this back around, I think that's what's really, really special about America. Like, I don't know if your personal story with your bank is possible in any other country.
Not that I'm aware of. No. Yeah.
And I don't know that MKC is possible in any other country really either.
Yeah.
And part of that isn't because like somebody's like, well, you can't make knives in Canada and sell them or whatever. And it's like, well, no, you probably could. I don't think I could get some of the help I've had along the way. Like, we bootstrapped this company up until the point I needed to walk into Trail West and go, hey, my garage is too small, but I can't afford this $1 million building on my property. Mm-hmm. Right. So like, there's the Dave Ramsey method. I actually went on his podcast and whatnot. And there's the Dave Ramsey, all debt's bad debt, whatever. And I think there's absolutely some value and some truth to a lot of what he preaches and talks about. But then there's just the fact of the matter that like at a certain point, you're sitting in your garage with 8 employees in a tiny 2-car garage. And you need a couple $1 million worth of equipment and $1 million building. And there has to be some way to make that next step that maybe isn't going to, and you don't want to take 7-8 years to do it.
Right.
There's also this like strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
If I struggle around in that garage, like how long do people stick with us before they're like, these guys are never going to grow. I'm never going to get their knife. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, no, we got to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're accurate in that I think it's tough to describe, but I think if it's not too many words, we're essentially an investment bank in a community bank model.
Yeah.
And so we're a community investment bank. And we've focused on jobs creation, and that's a lot of the passion behind it. And in this county, there have been businesses that have created significantly more than 100,000 jobs, not in this county, but with their businesses that we have worked with, directly and been a major part of the the financing stack for them for many years. And so it's difficult for us with modern standards of how banks are evaluated on that community investment, in that we're investing in businesses that create these awesome jobs.
Yeah.
And that's our approach to it, but that doesn't, match a normal kind of, model.
Right. Yeah. And, when I tell people we bootstrap this thing, we really did that until we walked in, and it sounded crazy, kind of what we were wanting to build on my property and whatnot, but also we had the numbers to back it up, where also the bank could look at it and go, no, I mean, they haven't borrowed $1 in 2 years of building this, and they've done a couple million in sales, right? Like this is, give them a lot of credit, but also it wasn't that hard of a bet necessarily. It's just wrapping your mind around how fast it happened and like, can it keep going and some of that, but the numbers were there. And I tell people, like, if you walk into your community bank and say, I need $1 million to start my, cookie making business, and you haven't done anything yet, they are going to laugh at you, and so that's where I think it's like a combination of being really smart and not having bad debt, and being very cautious in the beginning and making the right moves and getting to a point where you do have some leverage and you've kind of got a hammer. And then I think that's where the power of banking can be unbelievable. Because the other option for us, and it was absolutely an option, was to not come to you and not borrowing money in banking, like the way that we're doing it with our building is 100%. It's a form of betting on ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Because the other thing that we could have done was the zero debt method, but I could have gone and given away 40-50% of my company.
Right.
And I could be sitting here with the same building, all the same stuff going on, but I've now lost half my company for the rest of time.
Yeah.
And
for an asset there's no way it's going to appreciate at the level your business will if it succeeds.
And that's definitely like, if I'd be lying if I said I didn't have like those, you get those oh shit moments when you see how big your payroll is and you see all your overhead and you're like, God damn, I mean, I'm building knives here. Like maybe I should just take investment because this is insane. Because, you're used to, as a regular person, seeing normal numbers, and then you see what your payroll is, and it's like, well, that's more money than I've ever made in my life, and I'm paying that every month, So it's easy sometimes to second guess yourself and be like, well, I don't want to go borrow money. I'm just gonna take the, maybe a little safer route. But I'm with you. There's also something with, I would feel just as much obligation to the rich guy down the street who invested 45% into my business, right, as I do to your bank that I'm borrowing it from. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting, I don't know, it's interesting, but I very appreciative of the support that you guys have shown us.
Thanks.
Was that girlfriend back in the day? Is that your wife now?
Fortunately, no. That's
when did you get married?
Many years ago. 2010, February 10th, 2010.
So after you started the bank.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Met my wife 6 months prior, and the first night I met her, she said, the second night I met her, she said, I heard you like to date a bunch or whatever. I would be interested in dating you, which floored me. Took me off guard. And, but she said, but I don't want to, I don't want to, be involved in something where somebody's not serious about, pursuing that, while we're trying that out.
Yeah.
And, it took me about, 3 seconds to process that. And I was like, I know a good deal when I see one. That sounds good. And so we went out every night from that, moment on.
You kind of knew that was it.
That was it.
Yeah. How many kids do you have?
4. Yeah.
4 kids. Boys, girls?
Yeah. All boys. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We had 3 boys within 12 months and 21 days, twins, and then 12 months, 21 days later had a 3rd boy, and then 3 more years later had another one.
Wow. So you had lots of things broken in your house.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Boys
houses.
learned how to ride their bikes inside our house. We have an old frat house that was like perfectly imperfect. And so they still ride their bikes sometimes in the house and, go around the small number of stairs and that. But, yeah, it's a lot of boys.
Are your parents still alive?
My dad passed away 16 years ago, almost to the day, the 29th of September. And my mom passed away a couple years ago.
Okay.
But they, spent their later years out in Montana with me fishing a lot.
They got to see the bank grow.
They did. Yep.
I bet. What would your parents think? They had to have been pretty proud of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did your dad ever wrap his mind around the fact that his kid owned a bank?
Yeah. I'm like, Dad, I could sell it for, this much, now after we'd been in business for like 2 years right before he passed away. And the amount that I could sell it for was basically exactly what I, had into it. And he's like, you ought to take it.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was definitely proud and good at business.
I've told my dad a little bit of like what we could sell the business for, and he's like, take it,
Yeah.
But it's I think it is cool for parents to be able to see that success. I'm glad that they were able to see that, grow that bank. That's cool.
Yeah.
And it struck me early in the podcast, you said your dad was into flying.
Yeah.
Which obviously you are too now.
Yeah.
When did you get your pilot's license?
I started training when I was 15
with him
and with an instructor. And I thought that everybody flew and everybody had access to that kind of stuff. And I wanted to do track and, chase girls and have high school fun or whatever. And so then it took until, it was, and I said the .com crash was 98 early. I think it was 2003. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, in 2003, so 37 years old, went into training went to Minuteman and went to a training class the fall before. And Mark Bretz walked into the training class, and another guy, Eric Combrecht, that's the chief pilot at Neptune Aviation. And I think he was 16 or so at that time. And then Mark and I were older, guys. But anyway, so we just totally got into it. And both Mark and Eric have far exceeded, my capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But very passionate about it. And so, always calling each other, talking about, planes and what you can do and this kind of stuff. But anyway, so I was, fairly old. But I appreciated it a bunch more at that time. Cause like, okay, this is,
special.
You got to work hard and it's a sacrifice and costs a bunch to do it. And, bought an old, 172. Mark bought half and I bought half and, ran that for a number of years. And then, got a fancier plane, and then have a, moderately, fancy plane now, but not very fancy, but in the scheme of things, but
I've kind of started going down that rabbit hole just a little bit. I'm 2.2 hours into my flight training.
Nice.
So we were doing steep turns the other day up there in my second lesson. And, it was also really smoky. We went up over Arlee and we were kind of flying up there.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, we're going to do some steep turns. And I'm still in that, just getting the feel of everything. And, doing a big, long 360-degree steep turn and basically just seeing the sky go by and just losing my bearings of like, just kind of takes a little bit to adjust to.
Absolutely.
And trying to learn to fly with my eyes outside of the cockpit. I'm always wanting to watch all the gate, am I losing altitude? Am I gaining? What's my airspeed? What's my angle? Everything.
Yeah.
And, he's like, hey, eyes, learn to fly with learn to know where you're at with all that with your eyes outside the cockpit,
Right,
you know.
right.
And then working on my written stuff, which I kind of really need to pick back up on and try and. I was doing really, really good until I got into like cross country flight planning and all these different things start stacking up and weight and balance and all fuel, your distance for fuel and all the things and all the flight planning. And I started like I need to go back on some of these lessons.
Yeah,
grasp.
It's changed so much from when I it's basically a slide rule or whatever when I started.
Yeah,
but now it's that 4-flight incredible planning.
And that's the thing that the way they still am like I'm still learning it is a lot of the old school way. But everybody that I know that flies is like you're going to do all that, which it's good to know. But to me, you're going to get all that done, and you're going to use 4-flight and punch it all up, and it's just going to be like there. And
But you have that spot in your mind that's like, don't put that 100-pound mallet in the back of the plane or whatever. There's common sense. For center of gravity and all that. My oldest son by 2 minutes, he's got about 70 hours flying now. He's not old enough to get a license, but he was doing training this afternoon, ground school, and then is flying once or twice a week. And
who's he training with?
Eric Combrek with his aviation academy out of Kalispell. He has. He's also the chief pilot for Neptune, but he actually has a young instructor that flies down from Kalispell and picks him up, wherever he's at, and then another man in town that I've known for a long time was doing the ground school with them, and then just picked up an older clean. With Eric, trainer plane. And so have more access to a
172 or
is it like that, a Cherokee 140.
Yeah.
Really, really pristine, beautiful that Eric found and helped us with. But he also runs the Missoula, Mountain Museum of Flying and is starting another museum up in Glacier. I've wanted to introduce you to him many times. He's only about 40 years old and has done so many things, flying helicopters, flying long lead, industrial lift helicopters, ambulance, fixed wing, firefighting, and then running museums, being a great dad to a couple of beautiful daughters, and lives beside his hangar and just totally passionate about it. So there's a very strong aviation community out here, which he's at a whole nother level than I'll ever be. But and his dad was also.
No, I'm trying to commit to it through this winter to really dive into it good. And I started my flight school, online kind of school stuff this last spring, but then with the building and everything we had going, I kind of tabled it. But now that because I was traveling a lot, but now that I'm home, going to try and get through it. But I think it'll be a fun thing to do for sure.
Just incredible. Every time there's never been a time that I've flown that I haven't at some point during the flight looked around like, how is this even possible? Like, what am I doing? This is crazy. I'm going 200 miles an hour sitting in a, lawn chair. Like what? This is crazy.
No, it's pretty cool. Well, awesome. Well, what an amazing story. Congratulations on, say congratulations as if you won some. It was a lot of hard work to get to where you've gotten, but congrats on an amazing, successful business. And I think it's, how do you feel the state of and more community bank, but small, I'd say smaller banking, whether it's banks that are doing similar to what you're doing with investment, or community banking. Like I've heard rumors about, and I'm very passionate about, like, this needs to be a really important topic, but it's harder and harder for community banks to be surviving, and they're getting gobbled up by, it's kind of like a farmer, right? It's really hard to survive with a small farm, but the big farms are crushing.
Yeah.
What do you think the outlook is in the next 20 years for like community banks?
I think that it's still strong, but but they're going to have to adapt to give some numbers, which I'll be off by, some order of magnitude, but there was something like 20,000 banks in America in the 80s, 10,000, again, I'd have to fact check myself, but 10,000 in the, 90s. And we're, they're going away quickly and down to, like I say, about 4,500 in America.
That's way less than I thought there would be.
Yeah. And it's way less than there would have
been. In the tens of thousands.
Yeah. And it was. And that's so that was one of the things I felt bad correcting you on that, and wanted to point out that
I'm glad you did.
It used to be, but they're going away fast. And the government was slowing down the acquisition process. Otherwise, it would have they'd gone faster, because they wanted banks to not buy more than one bank a year and that kind of thing, which apparently is getting loosened up. But anyway, I think with artificial intelligence and larger banks, that the challenges of, hey, you haven't been in business, which we've had a number of deals over the years that literally were over things that simple, like, well, you're starting this new business and it hasn't been in business for 2 years, so we can't lend you the money. Well, but I've had this other business been in business for 8 years, or 15 years. And well, but that's not that business. Like, okay. Anyway, so where we can look at that guru of common sense and go, yeah, what difference does it make to us? We get it. But anyway, so my guess would be that it's going to become more and more concentrated in these, kind of super banks. And so more like Europe, New Zealand, Australia, but banks that can find a niche and serve that community in a way that's not being served or can't be served by those, very large banks. I think there's a bright future for that. But my guess would be that the number of banks will go in half, again, in the next, 5 to 10 years. And then it's a real challenge, and the ability to make a reasonable return on the money versus the stock market and that kind of stuff is not good. Most banks have not made very much money in quite a while. Yeah.
I've actually talked to my employees. I've done this speech to them several times over the last couple of years, because we've had so many, we've hired so many people that crowd downstairs is constantly changing. But I've told them over and over and over, I don't care if it's Trail West, I don't care if it's, whatever. I said, do not bank somewhere where you can't walk in and talk to a teller, where you can't walk in and do your deposit and withdraw some cash. And ideally, be able to say hello to a loan officer, if not, the vice president or one of the managers or something. And I've told my guys here, I said, when you go deposit money in the bank downtown here or somewhere downtown in Missoula, don't just drive through the drive-through and drop it off. Like, walk in and start developing a relationship where pretty soon they're like, hey, Tom, how you doing? And how's work going out there at MKC or whatever? Because I do believe, finances is one thing, but there is relationship part of that. And I said, you don't know when your house is going to burn down, or when you're going to have your wife's going to want to start a little small haircutting business in your garage or whatever. And I believe this, it's not just banking. I believe throughout so many things, it's about relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So much of our growth and success has been relationships we've built throughout the industry in various ways. But that's kind of like my soapbox speech for anybody in any town in America is, and it's a real problem if you can't walk in and say, hey, how much is left on my home loan, or what, whatever. And I know a bunch of my employees are switching their banks because they said they can't even go find information out about a loan that they've got, or, what they owe, or how to make an early payment, or walk in there and say, God, I had 4 or 5 things go wrong last month and I can't make my payment this month. What can we do about that? How do you help me get through to the next month? Because that's what the really good community banks are great at, that kind of thing of like,
absolutely.
All right, thanks for being honest. Let's figure it out. And we're not going to charge you a bunch of terrible fees to do it, But so that's kind of my soapbox. But I think what makes people talk about how great America is, and it is, but I think that's something that's just glossed over because we're all just used to growing up with banks around us. But boy, you wake up one day and you realize there's not a bank within 5 towns of where you live. Makes it a lot harder to, to chase your dreams.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Tom. I appreciate it. Bank of Montana, has been instrumental in what we're doing right now, and can't wait to show you the building and show you the progress we're making. So.
Thanks a ton. It means a ton to us. We think about you every day.
Yeah, I appreciate it. All right. Thanks.